You know, I told you, right? If you need anything from Kai, you should tell me. Kai is so busy that he barely has time to check his own phone. I couldn't help but widen my eyes at Eleanor's sudden change in demeanor. It was the first time I had seen Eleanor in such a temper. Well, I thought it was my fault for breaking the promise, so I decided to back down for now. But I shouldn't have believed Eleanor's words. It became clear from a call from Kai after 3 years. I think Mom and Eleanor might know, but dairy farming doesn't bring in that much income. So, the $4,000 a month for Dad's hospital bills I've been sending for over 3 years is the limit. At that moment, I couldn't understand what Kai was talking about. What? Dad passed away 3 years ago. What are you talking about now? What? What do you mean? I haven't heard anything about Dad dying. I had believed that Eleanor had informed about my husband's death. What did she do with the huge sum of $4,000 a month, pretending it was for hospital bills? Knowing all the facts, I felt furious, but I decided to leave it to Kai. My name is Mila Williams, a 60-year-old housewife. I married my husband, who is 10 years my senior, and we have 2 children, a son and a daughter, building a happy, albeit ordinary, family. Over 30 years of marriage have passed, and our eldest son, Kai, turned 30 and was about to get married. His partner was a colleague from work named Eleanor. Eleanor grew up on a dairy farm in Vermont and moved to New York after graduating high school. Kai brought her home to introduce her to the family. Eleanor, having grown up in a serene environment, seemed like a gentle and kind lady. I thought she would make a wonderful wife. But then, Kai, speaking in a tone that seemed a bit hard to say to the family, said, "You know, I'm thinking of becoming a son-in-law to Eleanor's family and taking over the dairy farm." According to Kai, Eleanor, being an only daughter, needed a husband to continue the dairy farm. Suddenly hearing about becoming the successor of a dairy farm, I became worried about Kai. "Are you sure you're okay with that, Kai? You have no experience." Eleanor smiled and said, "Don't worry. My dad said he would teach everything from scratch." Well, I love animals, so once I learn the job, I'm gonna give it my best shot. But, you know, me being the eldest son and going to be a son-in-law. I looked at my husband, but we didn't object. We had a reliable daughter. Our daughter, Madeline, is currently 27 years old. She's single and living at home, but her boyfriend lives nearby. Madeline's boyfriend often visits our house, and we get along well with him. Madeline, trying to reassure Kai, said, "Don't worry about us, bro. If I get married, I plan to live close to our parents, or if my boyfriend agrees, we might even consider living together here." At Madeline's words, Kai looked relieved. As parents, seeing Kai happy with the person he loves is all that matters to us. And so, Kai got married and started living in Vermont, where his in-laws' farm is located. However, shortly after we sent Kai off, believing in his happiness, a huge pitfall was lurking in their married life. A month had passed since Kai's marriage, but we hadn't heard from him. He must be working hard at the dairy farm. That's what I thought, so I didn't contact him either. Then, one day, Eleanor visited our house alone. When I asked if Kai wasn't with her, Eleanor replied, "Dairy farming doesn't make much money, so I've found a new job back home. It's a branch of the company I used to work for, so sometimes I have to travel here on business. From now on, I'll make sure to drop by when I'm in town." Well, being married and still having to travel for work must be tough. I expressed my surprise, but Eleanor seemed unfazed. No, it's not that uncommon these days. Especially for dairy farmers, it's common for both the husband and wife to work. Oh, and since Kai is too busy to get in touch, if you have any messages for him, I'll make sure to pass them along. So, please, contact me on my cell phone from now on. After delivering her message, Eleanor left our house in a hurry. Maybe Kai really is that busy. With that thought, I decided to at least let Kai know Eleanor had visited and sent a message to his cell phone. However, days went by without even a read receipt. I wished he could at least take a moment to read my messages. But imagining Kai struggling with the unfamiliar work of dairy farming, I resigned myself to the situation. Eleanor began visiting our house about once a month. Wondering if she really had that much business travel, I asked her. It must be tough for you. In times like these, with the husband farming and the wife working at a company, it seems like there's no time left for the two of you. No, it's okay. But why do you ask? Well, I thought Kai was busy, so instead of calling, I sent him a message. But he hasn't even read it, so I figured he must be really busy. Upon hearing this, Eleanor's expression turned stern in an instant. You know, I told you, right? If you need anything from Kai, you should tell me. Kai is so busy that he barely has time to check his own phone. I couldn't help but widen my eyes at Eleanor's sudden change in demeanor. It was the first time I had seen Eleanor in such a temper. Well, I thought it was my fault for breaking the promise, so I decided to back down for now. I'm sorry. I'll make sure to do that from now on. So, if there's anything, please let me know. I apologized, but Eleanor kept a suspicious look on her face. Did I really do something that bad? Unable to understand Eleanor's feelings, I silently watched her leave without saying anything. Then, some time passed. And my husband was suddenly hospitalized. Even though he was under full-time care, I made it a point to visit him at the hospital every day. I was too busy to entertain Eleanor whenever she came. Still, Eleanor continued to visit our house as usual. When I mentioned my husband's hospitalization, she responded indifferently. Is that so? That must be tough. Well, yes. So, I can't really offer you any hospitality even if you come. Given that she mentioned being on business trips, it was hard to ask for her help. Still, I secretly wished she would offer some assistance. Understood. I'll refrain from visiting your place from now on. Oh, and please, at least let Kai know his dad's in the hospital. But he seems so busy, I feel bad asking him to come. Just tell him not to worry. After making this request, Eleanor said, "Okay, I'm sorry to have disturbed you," and left. Is this how all young wives are these days? Not even a word of sympathy upon hearing their father-in-law is hospitalized. I felt uneasy about Eleanor's lack of warmth. A few days later, my husband's condition suddenly worsened. I tried contacting Kai in a panic, but couldn't get through to him at all. With no other choice, I reached out to Eleanor's cell phone, and she answered immediately. Eleanor happened to be nearby on a business trip. As I was about to ask Eleanor to get in touch with Kai, she said, "I'll head over right now. Please tell me which hospital he's in." So, I gave her the hospital's name and Eleanor came over. However, not long after, my husband quietly passed away. By the time Eleanor arrived, the family was already engulfed in sadness. I'm sorry I didn't make it in time. My father-in-law has passed away, hasn't he? I'll call Kai right now. Eleanor said and headed towards the lobby. After a while, she came back looking somewhat panicked and said, "I'm sorry, but it looks like a calf is about to be born. It's the first pregnancy for the cow, so Kai has to stay with her and won't make it to the funeral. Instead, I'll help with everything from the funeral preparations to anything else that's needed." At her words, the family was once again thrown into turmoil. Was dairy farming really that demanding? Not even being able to attend his parents' funeral. Thinking about Kai's busy life made my heart ache. Yet, I couldn't express my feelings to Eleanor, who offered her help. There was no choice but to proceed with the funeral without Kai. Meanwhile, Madeline seemed displeased by my side. It seemed she had her suspicions about Eleanor. Then, 3 years after my husband's death. Although Eleanor has visited our home occasionally over these 3 years, we haven't been able to get in touch with Kai at all. Even though he's the eldest son, once he got married, he completely went over to his wife's side. Moreover, dairy farming is a job unimaginable to someone like me, who lived in the city. Out of consideration for Kai's in-laws, I couldn't bring myself to contact them. However, my distrust of Eleanor gradually grew. Eleanor kept saying Kai was too busy to be reached, but surely he could find time to at least read a message. Perhaps Eleanor was hiding something. In fact, after my husband's funeral, Madeline told me something. I saw Eleanor walking around the entertainment district in flashy clothes late at night with a friend. Is she really here on business trips? At the time, I said, we shouldn't suspect people without good reason, but now, my doubts about Eleanor have only deepened. Then, one day, I received a call from an unknown number on my cell phone. I was surprised by the voice I heard.
Ah! Finally got through! Hey, it's me!
Eh? Kai, is that you? It was Kai's voice, which I hadn't heard in almost 3 years.
What's going on? Did you change your number?
Yeah, something's been off for a while. I've been trying to call you or Madeline, but I couldn't get through. It was always busy. I was surprised by Kai's words, since neither Madeline nor I are the type to be on the phone often.
Really? That is strange, isn't it?
Right? Well, that's not why I called. More importantly, I've been wanting to ask you something for a while. Kai suddenly sounded serious, so I wondered what was on his mind. What is it? You sound so formal all of a sudden. You might have heard from Eleanor, but dairy farming doesn't make a lot of money. So, the $4,000 a month for Dad's hospital bills I've been sending for over 3 years is the limit. I couldn't understand what Kai was talking about for a moment.
What? Dad passed away 3 years ago. What are you talking about now?
This time, it was Kai who seemed surprised.
Eh? What do you mean? I haven't heard anything about Dad dying.
The conversation with Kai wasn't making sense. I tried to calmly organize the content of our conversation in my head. Then, I reached a conclusion. But before stating it, I asked Kai a question. By the way, whose cell phone are you calling from right now? Oh, this? It's my smartphone. I thought maybe my old phone had trouble connecting because of the distance. So, I switched to a different mobile carrier. I would have called from a landline, but it's in my in-laws' room, and there aren't any payphones nearby. So, it was indeed a new contract. I asked if he had already told Eleanor about it. Kai replied, No, I wanted to get in touch with you as soon as possible after signing the contract, so I called you first. I was planning to tell Eleanor next. I see. What about the smartphone you had with the previous carrier? Have you canceled that contract yet? No, I plan to use it until the end of this month, so it's still active. I felt relieved to hear that. I was worried there might be a reason we couldn't get in touch with Kai, so I had Madeline teach me about smartphone features and settings in advance. Then, I asked Kai to check his old smartphone. Could you check the call blocking list and the message apps block list on that smartphone? Eh? Okay, got it. Kai said and hung up to check. A few minutes later, he called back, sounding apologetic. Mom, sorry. I don't really use messaging apps much, so I hadn't noticed. My name was on the block list, wasn't it? Yeah, Madeline's was there too. Strange, I don't remember doing that. Apparently, our names were also on the call rejection list. And even the email address had been changed. I had a pretty good idea of who might be responsible. It was someone who knew well that Kai rarely checked his smartphone. They must have taken advantage of Kai's busy schedule. However, I couldn't just tell Kai who I suspected right away. I tried to approach the subject gently, considering Kai's potential shock. I guess with all the unfamiliar dairy farming work keeping you busy, it's no surprise you didn't notice the settings on your smartphone. Plus, your wife being so busy with her job and all those business trips.
Huh? Business trips, Eleanor? And a job? What do you mean?
Kai's response surprised me. Eleanor had lied about that too? According to Kai, Eleanor wasn't working at all. She had told Kai and her own parents that she was visiting our house to take care of my husband, alternating with me because he had been in and out of the hospital. I was at a loss for words at Eleanor's actions. So, the Eleanor dressed up in the entertainment district that Madeline had seen was just coming to the city for fun. It seemed Eleanor's series of wrongdoings were about to be exposed. When I told him, Kai responded in disbelief.
Eleanor? She's been deceiving us, our family, all this time?
It seems so.
And that $40,000 might have been spent on living it up in the city.
The thought made me seethe with anger. Kai was eager to confront Eleanor right away. Though I wished I could be there to support him, considering his family's feelings, I decided to let Kai handle it. That night, I told Madeline about the phone call from Kai. Madeline, with a look that said I knew it, propped her cheek in her hand.
Mom always said not to speak ill of your daughter-in-law, so I kept quiet, but I always thought there was something odd about Eleanor. But I never imagined she was deceiving Kai out of $4,000 a month.
Madeline said. Siblings, it seems, observe each other more closely than even parents do. Madeline's intuition was sharp. I had thought that as a sister who had her brother taken away, she was merely harboring suspicions towards her sister-in-law's actions.
I'm sorry, Madeline. If I had believed what you said a little more, maybe we could have noticed the signs earlier. But it's not just Kai, right? Not noticing something was off with his own phone for over 3 years. That obliviousness, you're just like Mom.
Madeline remarked. Indeed, Kai, who had always been serious since he was young, would become so focused on his work that he'd lose sight of everything else. He might be similar to me in that once he decides on something, he doesn't look around calmly. At a time like this, I'm grateful to have the reliable Madeline with us. However, I couldn't just relax. I wondered how Kai would deal with Eleanor. Could he really get the stolen money back? No, more importantly, could they still manage to get along after this? As various thoughts crossed my mind, I became restless again. And then, the next day. It was a holiday, and Madeline was at home too. Around noon, the doorbell suddenly rang. Looking at the monitor, I saw Kai and Eleanor standing there. Opening the door, I saw Kai, looking angry, gripping a tearful Eleanor's arm tightly. It seemed Kai had brought her here by force.
Mom, sorry for the sudden visit. I just had to make Eleanor apologize to you in person. Oh. It's just a blocked contact, no need for her to apologize for that. No, it's not just that.
Kai replied, then looked at Eleanor.
Come on, Eleanor. Apologize properly. If you do, I'll forgive you this time.
Kai urged, but Eleanor kept her head down, silent. Then, Kai reached into Eleanor's bag, grabbing something. It was the jewelry like rings and necklaces I had kept in my room.
Eleanor has been coming over here occasionally, right? Then, while you were busy, she stole valuable items from your room and was trying to sell them on a flea market app. She took photos with her phone. When I confronted her about the unfamiliar items asking, "What's this about?" she confessed.
I couldn't believe that, on top of embezzling $4,000 a month, she was also trying to sell my belongings. Filled with indignation, I confronted Eleanor.
What were you planning to do with all that money you deceived out of us?
I asked sternly, and Eleanor bowed her head as if struck by lightning. Then, Madeline entered.
Eleanor, you've been pouring it all into a nightclub in the entertainment district, haven't you? Is that true? But how does Madeline know about it?
Kai asked, looking puzzled between Madeline and Eleanor. I knew Madeline had seen Eleanor in the entertainment district, but didn't know she was frequenting a nightclub.
I'm curious too. How did you know, Madeline?
I asked. Smiling slightly, Madeline said.
Actually, a cousin of my boyfriend happens to work at the nightclub where I saw Eleanor coming out of. You know a bartender named Ryan, right?
Madeline asked Eleanor, who didn't respond. Silence would typically mean denial. Continuing, Madeline said.
Normally, they're not supposed to leak customers' personal information, but Ryan told me right away that you were a regular.
For someone as important as a cousin who's like a brother to me, he said. Because of that, Ryan ended up getting fired from the club.
Madeline then detailed the story she heard from this person named Ryan. Eleanor had fallen for one of the bartenders at the club, nominating him every time and giving him expensive gifts. Indeed, flying in from Vermont would amount to a considerable sum. Once everything was laid bare, Eleanor began to cry suddenly.
After getting married, I just started missing life in the city. There's nowhere fun back home. That's it? That's your reason?
I was appalled by Eleanor's childish rationale. It was Eleanor who had wanted to live with her own family after marriage, yet this behavior was nothing short of juvenile.
Then why didn't you tell me? Instead of splurging in the city alone, I would have frequently taken you back to my parents' place and let you enjoy the city. I didn't want that. I wanted to enjoy the city freely without anyone's scrutiny, just like when I was single. Kai is always busy with the cows, and there's not a single lively place to see. I couldn't stand that life.
Well, maybe you should find a job in those lively places you're so fond of. Suddenly, an unfamiliar male voice came from behind, startling me.
And who might you be?
Levi. Eleanor whispered the man's name. He had the air of a bartender about him. Levi bowed slightly towards me.
Sorry for barging in like this. Ryan, who quit, told me Eleanor was here.
As he said this, Levi strode in, lifted Eleanor's chin with his finger, and said,
I appreciate the gifts, but you need to pay up the outstanding bills.
Eleanor became flustered under Levi's accusatory gaze. Beside me, Madeline signaled with her eyes, indicating check your phone. I looked at my smartphone and saw a message from Madeline that read, I was the one who told Ryan that Eleanor was here. It seems Ryan then informed Levi. I asked Levi for more details. According to him, Eleanor started frequenting the club over 3 years ago. Around the time I got busy with my husband's hospitalization and Eleanor stopped visiting our home. Initially, she visited the city under the pretense of business trips, but soon, the allure of nightclubs became too much. Eleanor had been smitten with Levi from the start, continually nominating him and showering him with expensive watches and bags. Eventually, her funds dried up, and she began accumulating a tab for her visits, promising to pay at the end of each month. However, she's been unable to settle her debt for 2 years. That's why Levi confronted her here. The debt was an amount Eleanor couldn't possibly pay without working. Desperate, Eleanor turned to Kai with pleading eyes. But Kai averted his gaze.
You're not expecting me to pay that tab, are you? But Kai, you said you'd let me enjoy the city if I had just told you. Please, I'm in real trouble. Help me.
Eleanor begged, clasping her hands together. Even Levi looked astonished by her audacity. Clearly, even he knew it wasn't a situation where he could ask a husband to settle his wife's debts. Kai, without facing Eleanor, said,
Sorry, but I can't pay that. It's a debt you incurred on your own, so you need to sort it out yourself. But Kai, aren't you worried about me? We're married. Enough already.
I couldn't hold back and shouted at Eleanor in anger.
You've continued to deceive the whole family, only thinking about yourself. Who do you think will help you now? You've made your bed, now lie in it.
My loud voice caused a stir around us. Eleanor had tears in her eyes, but Kai glared at her with a look that showed no mercy. Eleanor, desperate for forgiveness, pleaded with Kai.
Kai, I'm sorry. I'll apologize to your mom right now. Please forgive me? It's too late for apologies now. I've seen your true colors. Let's end this, Eleanor. I feel bad because your parents have been good to me, but I'm going to divorce and return here. What? No, I don't want that.
Eleanor clung to Kai's sleeve, begging desperately. To such a graceless Eleanor, I made it clear.
Eleanor. It's all your fault, so just accept the divorce. And you're going to work and pay back the money you took from Kai and the unpaid bills at the nightclub. No, I can't do that.
No, you can, ma'am. Levi interjected, grabbing Eleanor's arm.
What was he planning? Was this some drama scene where she'd be forced to work off her debt in some dubious establishment? Sensing my concern, Levi looked at Kai and me.
Please, don't worry. I won't do anything violent. I know the proper legal way to handle this. You did say earlier about Eleanor working hard in a lively place, didn't you?
I asked, and Levi explained. Levi's hometown is a fishing town, lacking in female workforce due to young women moving to the city. Many fishermen there want someone to take care of their domestic needs at the harbor.
How about it, Eleanor? It's a lively place with lots of fine men. If you agree to come, I'll write off the debt from the club.
What? That sounds like human trafficking. How is that legal? Oh, come on. That's not something I can just ignore. I'm just trying to help my hometown. It's a good job opportunity for you, isn't it? Levi, being a bartender, had a way of making even the dubious sound reasonable. Fishermen actually have quite a bit of money. By taking care of them, you'll get a good salary and can quickly pay off the family debt.
It's only right to settle your debts properly. It's a good chance for you to find such a lucrative job.
Eleanor looked at Kai with teary eyes. But it seemed Kai's decision to divorce was firm. What you do to pay off your debt after our divorce is up to you. Just sign the divorce papers tonight, Kai told Eleanor, who then looked resigned. A fishing town, that's really rural, isn't it? Back to country life again.
Don't worry, it's still in Vermont. Maybe you can visit your parents from time to time.
Levi tried to reassure her. But it seemed there was more to the story. After divorcing Kai, Eleanor found herself in a remote town far from home. Her parents' house, accessible within an hour by car from an airport with national connections and near a train station, contrasted sharply with the almost northernmost point of Vermont she ended up in. It would take over 4 hours by car to reach her parents' house, and the train line she used to take had been discontinued. The fishing town was bustling every day, leaving no chance for a break. And without a car, Eleanor couldn't return home. The fishing grounds were full of hot-tempered fishermen. Despite being one of the few women there, Eleanor was relentlessly yelled at. In a region suffering from a shortage of brides, it seemed no man viewed Eleanor as a potential partner. This was because the elderly in the community said Eleanor was not suited to be a fisherman's wife. The younger fishermen, believing in the elders' words, saw Eleanor merely as someone to be overworked, not as a companion or partner. Apparently, Eleanor has been sending messages detailing such experiences to Kai's phone almost daily. Perhaps she still has feelings for Kai, who is considering blocking her due to the nuisance. However, he hasn't done so yet because he needs to keep the lines of communication open until the debt is paid back.
I should have hired a lawyer for this. But I didn't have the money for that either. How is Eleanor doing now? Still busy as ever, no time to go back to her parents. I've told her parents about everything, and they're furious with her, saying she's no longer welcome at their home.
Kai shared. Hearing this made me feel a sense of relief. Eleanor, who had spent her time leisurely while Kai struggled with unfamiliar work at his in-laws, now faces her own challenges in a new environment. Meanwhile, our family has been enjoying peaceful days since Kai's return. And today is Madeline's wedding. Ryan, the groom's cousin who had become known to us through that incident, was present. After leaving his job as a bartender, Ryan found employment in a regular company. He had intended to find a job after graduating from college but ended up working in the nightlife industry when he couldn't find a job. He needed to support his family after his father was laid off, with 3 younger siblings to care for. Ryan, whom I met for the first time at the wedding venue, gave the impression of a very decent young man. He still keeps in touch with Levi, his former colleague, who is now the top bartender at the club. That's great. Levi really helped us out. It's a shame we won't see him again, but please pass on our thanks, I said. Ryoji promised to do so with a smile. I felt happy to have such a wonderful relative. Kai was seen chatting happily with a female relative on the groom's side. This could be a sign that our family might grow again. The connections we make with others can come from the most unexpected places. If Kai finds someone special again, our family and circle of relatives will only continue to grow and become more vibrant. I cherish the hope of maintaining these wonderful connections throughout life.